Hey, this is our screencast for Byrne and Gavin for our Canvas game. Our Canvas game's name is Blockizor, and that'll become apparent clear when we play the game. So let's just start with a short demo of the game. So we'll run it. As you can see, here's our game. Our game's really simple. The goal is to get to the blue square on top of the screen, which is here, and when you get to that you'll move on to the next level. It's a simple platform idea but with a twist. Our twist is that you must randomize the platforms in order to get up there. So it's a very luck based game, but makes it more interesting than just a regular, jump, collect the item, and the game is finished. So we have, if you press enter, it randomizes the platforms as seen. So it randomizes them, and you'll see the count up here. You can only randomize 10 times per level. So you need to think wisely before just randomizing the platforms in order to get some. So adds a bit of more of a skill factor into the game, and you can only randomize the platforms that you have not jumped on. See the way I'm already on this yellow platform? If I press enter, it will not be able to move. And see what the magenta can't be moved. So and now that I've run out of things, I can no longer get this up. So press Q and quit the game. So the game ends. So we'll just refresh this. Right, let's get to the block. Just show going to level 2. If I can do this. Okay, here we go. Okay, we want to randomize the blocks. Okay, we'll move there. Nope. Doesn't look like I'm gonna get there. Nope, didn't get there. Let's try again. Again, this is a very luck-based game, so I may not be able to get there. Okay. Should be able to make this. No! Well, anyway, you get the idea. You're supposed to go up, collect this, it'll move on to the next level, and so on and so forth. I'll just go quickly look at the code. Okay, we have our CSS here, just for our canvas, our control. We also have a music player, which is right down here. You can press it and play, and it'll loop through the music, which obviously you can't hear in a screencast, so I won't bother putting on. So we have our canvas, our rules, music. We have our dimensions of our canvas. We have our player object. Set the players X and Y position. X position to be half of the width of the canvas, so it's in the middle, and Y coordinates to be 10% of the height of the canvas. So we set the speed, how high they can jump, the velocity X and Y coordinate to 0, and a boolean value for if they're jumping and is grounded, and their color. Alright, we set up our keys in an array, so we do, and we for each corresponding key we have a handle input method which handles all our input for all our keys. We have friction, which causes a slight skid on our character, and our gravity, so we go down at a decent pace. So we have our random methods that will generate random values for our platforms to move, and for our goal to move, because our goal move for each level, it changes position randomly. So we have random ones for our X and Y, and there's one for we have one for a range for X and Y. Set a random count. We have our boxes variable, an array of boxes. It will be the frame of our game. So we have this frame around a game. So this is basically the boundary, so the player can't jump through the canvas. Also, when he's on the ground, he doesn't fall through the canvas. Let's see, we just have our box is objects declared here. We move on to our platform objects. So each one has an X and a Y, width and height, color, and it is touching. This is touching will be used for the collision test for when they move. And let's just move on. There's all our platforms. We only use 6 platforms, but we made extra ones just in case, you know, we want to throw in some more platforms in case it was too difficult. So we have a wind block object, which is our goal basically. And again, we have it as touching, and this is a random range in X and Y. Now we move on to our handle input. We have our collision test for the boxes to make sure we stay in the range. So our L or B, T, what do you think they stand for? Left, right, bottom and top. These are the left of the player, right of the player, bottom of the player, and top of the player. So it checks using the collision check, which is way down here. Collision check. It's this met here. Fairly complicated, but so basically it calculates, gets the vectors of each shape, so which would be our player, our box, and then adds half the widths and the heights of the objects. And if the X and Y vectors are less than half of width or half, they must be inside, actually causing a collision. So it figures out on which side we are colliding. So again, top, bottom, left, right, T, B thing. Then returns one of the values, either T, B, L, or, and by that we can do whatever we want. Like if it's hitting the top, it's hitting the top of a platform. The platform shouldn't be allowed to move. We can set our is touching variable to true, so they don't move anymore. So let's go back to platforms, wind block, and the platforms is exactly the same. So and our keys, so we have our 38 and our 32 for our drum keys, which is up in space. So we'll set the player jumping to true and the ground to false, obviously because they're off the ground and it's your ground. And this will control the player's height. So, and then we have our right, left, symbol left, and our enter. This is our somewhat algorithm to for the random platforms. It's pretty straightforward. I can actually get rid of that. If the random count is greater than 0, do this, else it won't do this. So you can only randomize 10 times. So first thing it does, it iterates through the platform array, checks to see if they're touching, if they're not touching, draw them in a new position under X and Y. So set the new X and Y position. So it'll redraw them. And then we have our cue to quit. So let's get into our game loop, basically. So we have two game loops, and the reason is because when one game loop after a while gets stuck for some reason, we go in an infinite loop. We rectified this by introducing a second game loop by kind of switching between each loop during each level, and this seems to have fixed the problem. So we have our far game loop, which is our initial game loop, and then we have our far level interval. So basically we have an update method, and we have a second update method. So our first update method is our initial one. So it'll basically call the method load drawable components, which is loads all our drawable assets like the blocks, the platforms, and all that, which is down further. So, and then we finally have a collision check to see for is the player and the win block and collide. If they are, the win value is switched to true, and then we will beat the level. So we'll clear the first interval and call the reset method, which will reset current values to original values, and then we will redraw the components. And we switch the thing is grounded to true, so we are no longer floating in the air, so we're falling. And then we'll initialize the second loop, the second game loop, which is our level interval, and call update 2. So here's our reset method. So basically it'll clear the player position, so I'll set the player speed to 5, random count back to 10, and set the movement keys to false. So this was just a fix for a bug, because when you won the level you would constantly keep jumping, and so it stopped that. And then redraw the tell all the platforms to be set back to their touching is to false, so it can move again in the next level. And then we have update 2. Update 2 is basically the same as update 1, except for it switches the game limit interval and the level interval, so they switch between. So every second level this is called, every odd number the other update is called. So we have our collision test. We have a simple bounding box collision test. It was what we started off with, but we do not use it anymore. We just use the collision check method function because it works better. And we have just going into our drawable components here. Just draws the game over when you press Q, draws all the blocks, draws the player, draws the platforms, redraws the platforms into new locations for each levels, draws the background, draws the text, like we have random level, so it redraws that. And we have draw win block, and this is our load drawable components, which will call each function to draw. And let's see, we just have a redraw components, which will redraw, clear the canvas, redraw everything that is needed. We have our event listeners, so when key down is pressed, we'll set the key values to be true, so we know what to press the key. The key is being pressed, and we'll decrement the random count when 13 is pressed, so that's the enter button. And we have our key up function. The key up is false, so the key is released. And then we have we declare our game loop and our input loop, which will handle our input, which will call the handle input and update every 1 millisecond. So that's about it. So yeah, our game's pretty simple and it's pretty easy to play. So I'm just gonna leave like that.